guys. Welcome to episode 17 of the Firefighters Podcast. It's uh, Women's History Month, and yesterday was International Women's Day, and I'm happy to announce that I have with me the first female acting commissioner of the FDNY, Miss Laura Kavanagh. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So we had a historic day yesterday also, right? We had 13 women graduate from the academy.
Yep, absolutely.
What was your message to them?
My message to them was that, my message to them in my speech was that, it's not only that they finished a grueling curriculum, it's that they're also inspiring far more women than I think they even realize, that, that they can pursue a career like firefighting, that they could pursue any career that they might have previously thought wasn't for them. So really encouraging them just to think of themselves as role models for the world, really.
Absolutely, they are. I have two daughters myself, and I watched Fireheart with my 11-year-old the other day. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Yeah.
And she loved it. She was into it. And then when the movie ended, they put all the pictures up of all the female firefighters out there, and the first one was Chief Rocky Jones. And she got all excited because I told her that I used to work with her, and she got all excited and she was really into it. It was cute.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So you've been with the FDNY for 8 years now. What drew you there? I know you did some political work before, but
yeah, I think it was two things. Like, one, I welcome a challenge.
Mhm.
And the fire department is obviously like the largest fire department in the country, and certainly I would say the best known in the world. And so there was the brand, and that, that it was the best, but also the challenge that there were a number of things they asked me to come in and help innovate. And I knew that that would be tough. And I'm not one for easy projects. So I don't like to sit on my laurels. I don't like to sit still. I like things that are hard. And I really like to help make change where you get the stakeholders buy-in. I think a lot of times you see outsiders come into agencies like this. You see folks from other agencies or an outside consultancy, and they come in and they sort of think they can just wave a magic wand and tell the fire department what to do. And I think that's a real shame. I think that there's like an incredible amount to be learned from an organization as great and as sort of old as the fire department. And so even if there's something that needs to be changed, I love the idea of being able to come in and like get to know and get to love a culture like the fire department and get to appreciate it, and then help it move forward in certain ways that might be asked of it by the outside world. Sometimes internally, sometimes externally, but I guess you could sort of quickly summarize it as like, I want to make change, but I want to make change that's good for everybody. And so that is a challenge. And I welcomed that challenge. It was a very unusual one. I certainly would not have ever thought this is a place that I would be doing work, but it feels kind of like I won the lottery.
Well, that's usually how the best things happen in life, right? But
Yep.
I think what you were saying, the opposite can also be true, because you're bringing an outside perspective to a place where they might not even see that change is needed, So certainly like someone like Commissioner Nigro, who had 40 years on the job, had a different perspective about it than someone like you coming in with a different background. So I think I think your approach is the right one, to make the change come from within rather than, firemen are don't like being told what to do, probably more so than anybody. So I think
that seems right.
right. So I think that's a cool way to look at it. I've also read that you're into sustainability, and that's something that interests me. What would your visions be with the FDNY? Do you foresee moving electric? How can we bring, because I think our rigs now get like 3 miles to the gallon on diesel fuel, and we run a lot. So how can we make that any better?
Well, the interesting thing, so my interest in sustainability comes from, like, I was raised by like sort of an outdoors person. My dad took me backpacking and hiking. And so, my sustainability mindset just comes out of sort of like respect for, the natural world, as opposed to sort of a deep knowledge of, say, electric batteries, is not my specialty.
Right.
But I would say I was actually surprised. I teach sustainability at Columbia, and I was surprised how often the fire department came up as an example of an organization that actually practices a lot of sustainability, and people would not think so.
Mhm.
Because the rigs are not the most fuel efficient vehicles for obvious reasons.
Right.
And I know that London, like we met with the London commissioner a few years back before the pandemic, and they are looking at electric rigs. We're not yet, because that's a heavy lift to ask. It's
Yeah.
not just obviously the size of the rig itself; it's also that it has to operate for potentially hours once it's on scene. So I think we're looking at London and some of the other cities to see if that succeeds or not, and if it does, we're certainly open. But there's a bunch of other ways that we have already moved in the direction of sustainability. So, our ambulance fleet has actually won a few awards for some of their forward thinking in terms of being more fuel efficient, charging stations. We focus on green buildings when we build new facilities, and we have a huge physical plant, as you know, and a huge fleet, as you know, even outside of the fire apparatus, our fleet is quite large. So, we actually, I think, I would say, are considering what we do for a living that people would not associate with sustainability. I'd argue we're a pretty sustainable organization. I think the couple of places that we probably will look at in the future will be, someday down the road, an electric rig, but I think that's a long way coming. We've got to be very certain that works before we look at it.
Right.
And then actually another really interesting area that Special Operations and Chief Esposito has looked at is that some of the specialty foam has carcinogens in it. But actually they have worked very closely with the environmental folks to find different foam that is less harmful, but just as effective. So, again, a lot of interesting ways that like our chiefs and our people are looking at sustainability that you would never think of when you think of the fire department.
Right. You just made me think of something with the carcinogens. Have you looked into the carcinogens that are in the bunker gear? Because a lot of them are the same that's used in the foam. Is that something that
Yeah, exactly.
you're working on?
We have. We've actually sat down and met with the unions. This was another, pre-COVID initiative that we're bringing back now that we feel we're finally on this other side of this, which is more facilities to do to wash the bunker gear so that you guys can wash more frequently, especially after big jobs. So that's
Right.
definitely something we're really focused on. Cancer reduction in general. As a lot of things have become more like smoke has become more dangerous as like new chemicals are put on furniture and new materials are used in buildings. So we're trying to focus on the other side of that, and clean is the new salty, right? Isn't that the term?
Right. I think that's the
Um,
catch 22 of it, though, is the fires are burning hotter, like you said, which means
mhm.
the gear has to sustain more heat, which
Yeah.
means you have to make the gear out of, you know, chemicals that might not be great for you. So it's kind of like a balancing act,
Yeah, it
really.
does seem like there's a tricky balance between, fireproofing and carcinogens, right? That sort of
Right.
fireproofing in its essence appears to, at least at this point, I'm sure it's going to move forward a little bit, does appear to use chemicals that, to your point, when you go into certain scenarios that are like you do, where it's so hot, it pushes the outer limits of certain materials.
Right. Well, I want to get back to the historical nature of your job. I know you mentioned it to the Probies yesterday, but have you taken the time to think about your role in the history of the FDNY and where you envision, other women going? Because I know we had a lull there, right? We hired 40
Mhm.
somewhat women in 1982, and then it kind of trailed off.
Yeah,
So what would your plan be for, I don't mean to drop two questions on you at once, but
it's okay.
is there a plan going forward to get women in higher up positions or?
Yeah, so I think to answer your first question, have I had time to think about it? The answer is no. It's been a quite obviously a very busy couple of weeks, unfortunately, very sad couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I'd also say I don't know. For me, I like to keep moving, and stopping to think about it just doesn't. It's not my style. I'm just trying to
right,
do my job, but I do hope that um, that other women that it makes them think anything is possible. I hope that's true. I certainly don't want to let them down. The other thing I'd say in terms of more women, I think there's two pieces of it. I think one is, like you mentioned, there was a lull, but that part of that is because that first group of women came in via lawsuit, right? Not They
mhm,
didn't come in through the recruitment process. And so I think you saw that lull because we didn't move immediately following the lawsuit to change recruitment. And we have done that now. So like we've now had actually a series of classes where there are a historic number of women. And I hope that becomes a regular thing. And I think it will. We changed our recruitment practices in such a way that, women were organically coming to us. And that's really how it's working, right? They're coming to us in the same way that you guys, our traditional candidates, have come to us, which is they hear about the job, they grow up with the job, they love it from an early age. And as soon as the test is open, they go and they take it. And so that's what we're seeing. And so I think that will sustain for quite a bit. And then hopefully what that means is that, as we have more women on the job, more of them rise to the ranks, they become lieutenants and captains and chiefs. I think you'll definitely see that.
Right. And I think, to what you said earlier, I think it's becoming more normal. I think as it becomes less historic, it's actually a good thing, because that means it's normalized. And I think the members, I happened to work with a female lieutenant for many years. And for me, it just seemed normal, like natural. But I know that there have been issues in the past, and I hope, I know I've been out for a while, but I hope that we're to a point now where that kind of went away. I know I trailed off there, but
I think what I'd say too is, I think, I'm not a firefighter, and what those women do, making it through the academy and being a woman in a firehouse, that, like, to me, that's a achievement far above my own. But what I would say is I do think that it helps to have women, even civilians like myself, certainly EMS, which is, has a much larger number of women than fire.
Right.
I think it helps to have us all in leadership. Like when I look around the table at headquarters, I see a much more diverse group of people. And so I think what that means is, even though it might take some time for that to rise through the ranks,
Right.
if people see that at headquarters, like you say, it becomes normalized, and you'll have women who maybe they're a firefighter now, or maybe they're a lieutenant, but they see me and they see other women sitting at the leadership table in headquarters, and it doesn't feel as daunting for them to get there eventually themselves.
Exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at. I feel like they might have been discouraged in the past just by seeing. Yeah, I think it's daunting to be an officer in the fire department anyway. I mean, you're in
Yeah.
charge of people's lives, and on top of
Yep.
the firehouse politics that go into it. So I think you're right. I think hopefully people are encouraged now, and see that people like you can be in charge of 15,000 or so men and handle it.
Yeah.
That's a crazy way to look at it.
And that is a crazy way to look at it.
But do we know the exact number of women on the job now?
So I think it's 134. I can double
Okay.
check that, but I'm pretty sure it's 134.
For people listening, that's out of about 12,000. So it's still not where it needs to be, but it's still better than 42, right? So
Yeah, I think the scale of our growth and the scale of the challenge are illuminating, right? So we've more than tripled the number of women that we had 8 years ago. This is obviously a historic high for the department, but it's still, a small amount in a really large workforce. So, it shows both that it's possible, but it shows, to your point, that we need to make a really sustained effort at it for a while. It's not like we're at 20% or 25%. We've got a ways to go before we get there.
Right. And I think it's cool. We're seeing a lot of daughters of firefighters taking the job, which I guess wasn't even possible when I was growing up, or didn't seem possible. So I think that's going to change too. I think you're going to see more, legacy children wanting to get on, because this, like I said, when my daughter saw that picture after the movie, her eyes lit up. Like she thought it was just a cartoon. Like she didn't realize that it was actually possible, So that's cool.
Yeah, I think some of that is, the changes in society benefit us as well, which is, even when I was younger, I didn't think of jobs like firefighting. They just weren't something I thought about. And so I think younger women have actually changed their outlook. I find when I talk to younger women who are close to age eligible, 18, 19, 20, that their just general outlook of what's possible for them as a job is much broader than mine was at that age. And so to me, that's a boon. It tells me that even a small generation gap has actually changed people's minds about what's possible for them, has changed young women's minds about what's possible. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, sure. And in the case of the FDNY, there is true equality as far as pay goes. I mean, everyone gets paid the
Yep.
same as opposed to most
Yeah.
other, businesses
Yep.
out there. I think I saw
Yeah, and
Goldman.
I think it's a like one thing I say when I'm talking to women about the job, because I run into women all the time and I sort of do my own recruitment, is that not only is pay equity present, but it's a family centric job, it's a family friendly job,
Yeah.
it's a job where you can have kids, and that's for a lot of professional women, that's not true. So the idea that you can have this honorable and professional job and still have those things be true is I think really great. And I think most women wouldn't think that about the fire department. They would think because it's so male that it might not be family friendly in that way. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. And they're always very surprised when I tell them that and excited.
Sure. And you get 25 other babysitters when you work at a
Yeah,
firehouse. So the
exactly.
fringe benefits.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I know you're very busy. I don't want to keep you very long, but one question I wanted to ask is what has been the hardest part? Like something you didn't expect? I know we've had some line of duty deaths since you took over, but is there anything that's something you kind of knew came with the job, but what is the one thing that surprised you?
I would say I'd actually say that is still the thing that is hardest with the job.
Yeah.
I just don't think you can understand as a civilian the scale of which loss is present in the fire department.
Hmm.
It's our own members in the line of duty, but it's also our own members from World Trade Center cancer. It's also just that it is a family. And so you actually know more, even when someone passes away not in the line of duty and not World Trade, you generally know about it, right?
Right.
Like the Bobby Cruz who just passed away, who
Yeah.
was an active duty member. I knew him because he used to drive me. And so, in a regular civilian workplace, you aren't so close that you know every birth and death and wedding.
Yeah.
And so that has actually, I think, come still as a surprise to me as a civilian, how present that is. But I'd also say that the flip side of that is like they've taught me a lot about how to cope with that and how to be there for one another. And again, that's also not present with civilians in your regular workplace, unless someone you were really close to passed away. You wouldn't even go to the funeral probably, but you certainly wouldn't show up at that person's house and do their laundry every day for 30 days,
Right.
or teach their kids how to drive a year later. Like regular workplaces don't make that like lifelong commitment.
Mhm.
And the fire department does. And I think that's really special. And I understand what it is now that I've seen how much loss they go through. I understand why they've built that resiliency. It's kind of necessary in order to experience so much loss. But it's also been a real lesson to me about, kind of how to be more present in your everyday life, even with folks who aren't your family, but can be like family.
Right. And you've came in at a tough time, not just with COVID, but we have had a rise in 9/11 deaths, as you mentioned, and
Yeah.
we've had these, it seems like line of duty deaths seem to spike, at least throughout my career. It'd be like we'd have a year or two with none, and then it'd be three or four rattled off. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you've had a rough time. But I have a very important question to ask you, and it's something you've
Okay.
done that I haven't, and I'm quite jealous. You went down to ladder 20 and met Tank.
Oh,
Um,
yes, I did.
is
You
he
should be
just as cute in
jealous.
person?
Yes.
He
He
is.
is he is a excellent fire department dog. Very cute. Obviously he's Dalmatian, so he fits the image. And he's well trained. So the members there did a good job with him.
Yeah, I heard they used to come in on their days off and fight over who gets to walk them around the neighborhood.
I
So.
I threatened to steal him on more than one occasion in our visit, so I understand it.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. Good
Sure.
luck to you. I hope
Thank you.
everything works out. I think a lot of us here are rooting for you. So,
Appreciate
and
it.
I also wanted to thank you because you set a great example for the women out there and especially my little girls. And I know they're going to be happy to watch this episode. My daughter is actually my cooking correspondent on the show, so you have to check out her
I'll have
segment.
I was just say I might need to consult with her on some cooking, but I'll
All
definitely
right,
check it out.
all right, cool. Well,
All right.
thanks
Thank you.
again.
Take care.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Thank you.